Hello, beautiful Planty people, and how are you doing today? I'm doing great. I hope you are all doing wonderfully. I hope you are transitioning into the new season that is winter, fall and winter upcoming. Before I get too far into that, if you are new here, hi, hello, my name is Nikki. This is my channel, Plants, Pots, and Whatnots. And to all of my gluttons for punishment who keep coming back for more. And I absolutely love, by the way, that some of you are now starting to put nicknames on yourself. That is so fun. Anyways, so thank you all of you so much for coming and hanging out with me. I really do appreciate it, and I love you all so much. So, I've been getting a lot of requests to actually do like a winter care video. Now, I did a fairly in-depth 45-minute winter care video last year, so I really didn't want to go into another big explanation. If you do want to go ahead and watch that video, I will link it up here. It really just breaks down every possible thing that I could think of. And kind of goes through everything. But in line with some of the videos I've been doing lately about my top 5 this or that, this video today is going to be my top 5 getting your plants through winter tips. Yeah. So if that sounds like something that you'd like to stick around and watch, then please stick around and watch. It's gonna be a quick down and dirty, here's my tips. If you want a lengthy one, go watch my other one sort of thing. So let's get into it. Oh, I had to take my hood off. It's actually quite warm today. Not a good day, I guess, to be doing this. But we are starting to lose all of our, leaves on the trees. My back door neighbors can now see right into my kitchen and dining room. Losing some privacy. But it is beautiful. I have this gorgeous birch tree in my backyard, and right now I'm looking at it. It has all these beautiful yellow leaves. And it just looks so great right now. I just wish those leaves would stay there. But anyway, I digress. Let's go ahead and start into my top 5 winter care tips to get your plants through the winter. Now, I do want to preface this whole thing by saying I live in Canada. So when I talk about my winter here, it's probably going to differ from each other person's winter. You may live in some of the southern states. You may be somewhere even more north and colder, where you have longer periods of darkness and cold. So keep in mind, I live in Ontario, Canada, and we have all 4 seasons here. And so keep that in mind as I'm going through here. The other thing that I will say is that everybody has to do what works for them. So just because I'm telling you these tips, these are not by any means the be all and end all, you must do this. These are things that I have done that have worked for me, and I just want to share with you my experiences. So let's just start. Okay, so number 1, I think, is probably the thing that a lot of people struggle with the most, and that is humidity. I'm not going to go into this big in-depth thing. We know that we all keep these tropical plants that require a decent amount of humidity. So some of my tips for you to keep the humidity up in your home. Number 1 is a humidifier. I think that is the biggest thing. They are an investment. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars or even, like close to $100 for some of these. There are some really great cheaper humidifiers that you can get that will do the job just as well. You may have to refill them more often if they're a little bit smaller, but don't go ahead and kill yourself or kill your budget for that. There's all kinds of different options. So for all of the things like lights and humidifiers and stuff like that, as always, I do have all of the things that I personally use linked in my Amazon storefront. And that link is below to my storefront. It's all laid out in categories, and I got all, like organized with it. Anyway, so humidifiers are probably my biggest piece of advice. Invest in one, you won't be disappointed. The next thing that you can do to increase your humidity around your plants is kind of grouping your plants together. Now this does come with its pros and cons, and I will get into that later. But plants naturally transpire, or they give off moisture. If you keep your plants together, the more plants you have in a group, they all transpire together, creating their own little humidity bubble, if that makes sense. So group your plants together. Like I said, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about all of these, but that's a really great way to help keep the humidity a little bit higher. You're not going to get like, you know, 10 to 15% humidity difference between your clump of plants here and the regular air. So don't expect that, but it does help. So the next thing I would recommend, if you have the means to, or if you want to, is remember that greenhouses and grow tents are also an option as well. A lot of plant collectors use those for getting through the winter months. As you guys may or may not know, I just got a grow tent from Mars Hydro. So I've taken a lot of my propagations and a lot of my more humidity loving plants that I know may struggle a little bit throughout the winter, and I've kind of put them in there where the humidity is like 98-99%, which is so fantastic, I can't tell you. So grow tents and greenhouses are also a great option. Another thing too is pebble trays. So on plants that do require a little bit more high humidity, you can just take, you can get them really cheap at like greenhouses, or even Walmart I think has them. They're just these cheap little plastic like plant trays for like saucers, but they're like super cheap. So you can get those, fill them with some pebbles to keep the pot up from sitting right on the bottom in the water, and just fill those little pebble trays up with water, and that just kind of increases the humidity around individual plants. So that is also an option. So last thing I want to mention, a lot of people will tend to lean on the side of misting your plants. In my personal opinion, and I know there's going to be people that disagree with me, that's okay. Not all of us think the same, and that's what makes us all wonderful and unique. I don't agree with the school of thought that misting your plants helps keep up humidity, and I will explain why. If you take a spray bottle, squirt it into the air, watch that water land on whatever surface, and then time how long it takes for those little teeny tiny water droplets to just evaporate entirely, it is seconds. By misting your plant, it doesn't really increase the humidity. It just, especially in drier winter air, when you have the heat on and stuff, your water, that mist is going to evaporate so quickly, it is of no benefit to your plant whatsoever. So personally, I don't do that. There are a couple plants that I spray specifically and only for the fact usually that there is, you know, something behind it that, like a moss pole or like a plank or something like that. So I will spray those, or I spray when I've got a new philodendron leaf coming out, because I found that is the most helpful way to get the new leaves on philodendrons to come out without looking all like, hey. Anyway, so that's my personal opinion. Like I said, everybody does what they find works. That's what works for me, or that is what doesn't work for me, I should say. Anyway, okay, so let's move along. So that is pretty much it on humidity. I will say also, if you have any additional questions after this video, please go ahead and throw them down in the comments, or you can reach out to me in my DMs on Instagram. Here's my Instagram account. Most people will tell you that I always respond to them. It might not be the same day, but I do get back to all of my DMs on my Instagram. I have been able to keep up with those so far. But yeah, so if you have any further questions after this video, by all means, don't hesitate to ask. I will always answer you. So the next thing we want to talk about is light. Now here where I am in the winter months, the sun is lower in the sky, so you get a shorter period of sun throughout the day. So it starts to get light right now at about 7 o'clock in the morning-ish, and the sun sets at about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening. That will get a little bit shorter when we get into the winter months. So my plants for the last, couple months have been accustomed to more daylight, stronger daylight, because the sun was closer. And now they're going to be going through this fall and winter period where they're not getting what they've been used to. Now, I hear a lot of people say, you know, certain plants go dormant in the winter and stuff like that. Now, I will say if you're keeping the same conditions in your home in the winter and fall that you had through the spring and summer, you're not going to experience those sorts of things. Now, there all are plants that will go dormant no matter what. Caladiums are one of those things. It's going to happen. Sometimes you can prolong that. I kept a caladium right into, I think, December last year. But then it eventually succumbed to its dormancy and whatever. So basically, as a whole, you want to try to replicate the same conditions that the plants were getting in the spring and summer if you don't want to see slowed growth, no growth, or dormancy during the winter. So in order to do that, you have to, like I said, give it the same conditions. So you're gonna have to supplement lighting by using things like grow lights. You're gonna have to move plants, try to get more plants into a window, you know, the windows that do give you a lot of light. You're really gonna have to like make some shifts. So what I have done, I mean, I don't get a whole lot of sunlight into my home anyway, so the large majority of my plants are grown in an artificial light scenario. And I think, you know, having gone through last winter and seen a lot of growth throughout the winter, I think I have to attribute that to my grow lights, because the plants aren't experiencing like a huge change in lighting. So they really just were unaware that it was winter and it was time that they really shouldn't grow. I had a lot of growth throughout the winter, not quite as much as through the spring and summer because obviously it's hotter. But the more that you can give them the same conditions all year, the less likely you are to see, you know, stunting growth and that sort of thing. Another thing that kind of goes along the same lines as lighting is the amount of light the plants are taking in. Clean your windows. It's going to let a lot more light through. Now I know in the wintertime cleaning the outside of your windows could be tricky, but as much as you can, you want to try to keep your windows clean so you can maximize the amount of light coming through those windows that will come through. You know what I mean? And the other thing is cleaning your plant leaves. I know I talk about this all the time, but cleaning your leaves helps so many different situations. And allowing your plant to absorb the maximum amount of light possible is one of the main reasons why you want to keep that. I mean, if you get this thick layer of dust on the plant's not going to be able to absorb as much energy from the light that you give it as it would if it was clean. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say on that. Let's move along to everybody's favorite topic, pests. So there are going to be some pests that you're not going to see probably as much or at all through the summer. Things like aphids, those are pests that typically are outside and come inside. I don't know many people, I haven't heard from many people unless you've picked it up at a greenhouse where they have had like aphid explosions in their plant collection in the winter. In my experience, that has been a situation where it has either come through my front window right onto my plant, and I knew that because it only hit the plant that was in the front window, or you bring it home with the aphids. But aphids is not something that you're probably going to see as much throughout the winter as you would see in the spring and summer. You will see an influx in spider mites. A drier air is the perfect breeding space for spider mites. So you're really going to have to be diligent, and they are so incredibly small. Get yourself a magnifying glass. Trust me. And the other thing is thrips. So thrips go in cycles, and they will kind of go through like I don't want to call it like a dormancy or a hibernation. But you will have a situation where like you're entirely pest free. You've gone through everything, you know there's nothing, but they will sit in a plant and then come out. Now, typically, in my experience, I have found that it's like at the beginning of every season, I tend to see, I wouldn't want to call it an outbreak, but I have seen an influx in thrips or spider mites or something like that. So really, you have to keep on top of checking them. And and washing your leaves. That's another one where it's really going to come in handy, and you're going to nip things in the bud before they become a real problem. So if you've had thrips before and you're like, nope, I got rid of them, I'm all good, just don't get too comfortable with that, please, because I learned that lesson last year, and if I can help somebody else learn from my mistakes or from my you know, inadequate knowledge, then you know, if I can help you, then that's great. I've helped somebody and I've done my job. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it on pests. Just check your plants. Check your plants. Check them when you're watering them. We look at our plants constantly anyway. Flip a leaf over, check your plants. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that. So the next thing is fertilizing. A lot of people will say absolutely do not fertilize throughout the winter, and to those people I say you're wrong. The reason I say you're wrong is because if you have a scenario like I mentioned earlier where your plants really haven't changed in temperature and humidity and in light, your plants don't know that the winter season is upon us, so they continue to grow. If your plants are still actively growing, they still actively need to be fed. Maybe you can rein in a little bit on your fertilizer, maybe do it half as often as you normally would. But if your plants are still growing, they still need those extra vitamins to be able to grow and flourish. So if your plants are still growing, whether it's winter or not, feed them. I don't know what that was. Okay. So that's pretty much it, all I have on fertilizing. I do have video on fertilizing that you can watch. I'll link it up here. Nope, up here. One day I will get that right. And basically the last thing I want to mention is watering. Drier conditions, depending on if you have your lighting and all of that other stuff the same, your watering may tend to increase or decrease. It really depends. If your plants are still actively growing and are still taking up the same amount of water, because the air in your home potentially could be a little more dry than it usually is, they may require a little bit more water. But watering really shouldn't change a whole lot. We are only going to water our plants when our plants are dry or close to dry, depending on which plant you have. So again, I will say it time and time again, use a moisture meter. I don't risk anything with my plants. The only time I don't use a moisture meter is on the plants that I know are water hogs, like my peace lily. I can water that every 3 days and it'll be like, thanks. So with the exception of like a few, you're just gonna water it when it needs water. So there really isn't this big to-do around, you know, watering. it's just one of those things. And I know a lot of questions that a lot of us plant tubers get is, how often do you water such and such a plant? That is like the most difficult question that you could ask us, because there's so many different factors. You know, the air in your home, the size of pot, the type of plant, the type of soil that you use. Like, it's an impossible question to answer. So my answer to anytime I get those questions to how often should I water, whatever, use a moisture meter, water when it's dry or almost dry. I usually water at about a 3 for like the majority of my plants, and that works perfectly. I have never had a problem with doing that. So that is my piece of advice for watering. Just use your moisture meter. If it's dry, water it. That's it. It doesn't have to be complicated, you know? Anyway, so that is basically my top 5 care tips for winter. Like I said, there's all kinds of other things that I go into in more depth in my other video. So if you want a little bit more of a like meaty winter video, you can go watch that one. But this is just, like I said, a down and dirty top 5 tips for you. And I hope it wasn't too long. I tried to stay on point and just, you know, keeping it simple, which is not my forte, as you know, as you can tell right now because I'm rambling. Okay, just end the video, Nikki. Okay, so as I said before, if you have any additional questions, please by all means ask. And with that, I will just go ahead and wrap up this video. So I would like all of you to have a great day, night, week, month, year. And I would like to also thank you for liking and watching and commenting and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. It is a huge help for my channel and I really do appreciate it. I love you all to bitty bits, and I will see you in the next one. Mwah!